Hello and welcome to Buildings of Tomorrow. My name's John Lester, and in today's episode, we're talking about the future of the office. Has this global pandemic spelt the end for the office as we know it? I'm joined today by James Bellingham. He's the head of digital buildings for Siemens Smart Infrastructure in the UK and Ireland. And he's here to talk us through this and give us a little bit of insight on this topic and really describe, what does an office look like tomorrow and into the future. James, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. So let's start with this opening question. Let's have a look at it. Does this pandemic, this new world that we're living in at the moment, does this spell the end for the office?
Yeah, well, I think it's an interesting topic, and it's something that made me want to think a bit more about it. And I was thinking, is it the end for offices now? We're all working from home in this big experiment. But then I was thinking about the reasons why I want to be in an office and why people kind of congregate around offices and how they're still an important part of, our day-to-day work lives. Maybe not every day, but there's some key areas that I think that we still need that centralized space.
Yeah, definitely. Like I think, I'm sure you're the same, I'm the same, and many people out there are the same, that working from home is a great dream, and we loved it for the first week, for the second week, but once you're 6, 7, 8 weeks down this journey, I just want to get back and chat to people, have a coffee, have that kind of personal interaction, get that energy that you get from your colleagues when you have ideas and ideas start to flow. How would you describe that feeling? Like, is that something that you're also feeling from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it's that kind of sense of community and that ease of collaboration that you get from being in the same space as people that you work with or people that you're, friendly with. And I think it's that really the office allows, to just turn around and speak to someone rather than emailing or calling them or setting up a call. And it helps to, you pick up a lot from the office and the group around you just by being in a space, especially, when people are new or learning. You see a lot of that learning comes from actually just absorbing what's around you. So there's lots of these kind of elements of an office environment that are hard to quantify but are really important to help create that sense of community.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned a word right there, community. And what you described, or some of it, and some of the things that I'm certainly feeling, is I miss that community feeling. What do you think it is about an office and that physical presence together as co-workers, as colleagues, that helps build that sense of community that virtual calls like we're having right now, emails, messages like you mentioned, can't deliver?
I think there's an element of kind of openness to an office environment, with open plan offices, with kind of restaurants and cafes and communal spaces where you bump into people. There's an element of that kind of unplanned interaction which you don't get if you're scheduling video calls. As good as video calls are for having a meeting remotely when you can't be together, there's something that you miss out by not being together.
Yeah, and I think you touch on something there, that's something that you miss out, absolutely. And it's not such a functional thing. I can see if you're bored, or I can see if you agree with what I'm saying or not. It's more that unspoken kind of comfort when you have other people around and you have those natural interactions. Yeah. You mentioned also that it's especially when we have new people, and even though we've had these couple of months remote in this big experiment, as you described it, it hasn't stopped people starting new jobs, hasn't stopped people joining new teams. How important would you see that aspect of the office, of that community, for people like this that are kind of starting something new?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking back to my days as a graduate engineer, and I think if I think about where did I learn the most from, and a lot of it was actually just sitting across the desk from my manager at the time and just hearing the kind of conversations, interactions, kind of day-to-day challenges that are faced by someone, or you know, kind of what kind of things are part of that role that I was kind of training for almost. So whilst you've got the formal training, which you could do on web-based learning, and you can still have calls with colleagues, it's that kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but you kind of get where I'm going.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just this absorption of information and a sense of the work environment that you get just by being there with everyone.
Yeah, and I think you described it as well. It's not having a set a meeting for every discussion. It's picking up little sound bites of things that are going on around you that create a bigger picture of whatever's happening. Where most of us that work in an office these days, we don't have a single role that we do, and we just know this one thing, and we come in every day and have a singular function. Many of us work in different teams, and it's this kind of breadth of interaction which you just don't get when you're here, and you can't have a call with 50 people in it because no one gets to say anything, right? I'm sure someone's done a study. There's an exponential destruction of productivity the more people that are in the call. By the time it gets to about 6 or 8, it's all over. So we talked about community. That's great. I absolutely feel it myself. I'm sure that many people listening do as well. Something else that we just touched on there is also, not only do you get that understanding and insight from those around you, but it can also help you get work done. Right? Does being in an office with the people that you work with have an effect on productivity in your perspective?
Yes, I mean, one thing that that I will say in favor of working from home is it can be the perfect place for me to get my head down, get a load of stuff done.
Definitely.
But for some tasks, it's just it is easier to do when you've got the people within your team, or the people from other teams that you might need to interact with in the same space. And there's also offices are changing. They're less about just having rows and rows of fixed desks. There's all different types of different types of meeting room, different spaces that you can use for different activities, project rooms, spaces where you can lay out everything that you're going to need for a project for 3 months and always return to that space. So there's lots of different activities that could be better facilitated in an office environment than in my office at home or the dining room table. It's just a kind of more fit for purpose environment that for certain tasks can make you more productive.
Yeah, and I like the example you used there, because we still have whiteboards and chalkboards, and we still have sticky notes and pens. There's something that typing notes into a OneNote or trying to explain something with a PowerPoint slide just can't give as far as interaction and creativity. And that's definitely something that we see more difficult to achieve, because even with these great tools that we have, and like, to be honest, I can't imagine trying to go through this great experiment 20 years ago when we were still working with dial-up internet or with word processors and no other tools. Some of the stuff that we have today is amazing in supporting us in this effort for collaboration, but it doesn't have that ability to scribble, and then someone else can scribble and comment. Absolutely. And go from there.
And you touched on creativity there, and I think creativity and also like innovation. My previous role as kind of leading innovation within the UK business was, so much of that is around just getting a load of people in a room, getting ideas onto the walls. I know it's kind of that cliche of stick up the post-its, but it really is often the best way to do it.
Yeah.
And those just kind of by somebody saying something, somebody else joining in, and your ideas grow in that way, rather than specifically saying, right, I'm going to sit at home and think of some ideas and then we're going to go from there. It's much more natural when you're together.
And it's not just the words that you say, but it's the energy and the excitement you see from the person next to you that becomes infectious, and then it passes through the whole room. I completely agree. So I really like that description. I guess that community, obviously a huge part of it's productivity, but specifically productivity for some things. I agree. If I had a spreadsheet or some data to crunch, home is the perfect place for this. No distractions, no interruptions, but for that creativity, that innovation, that thought and discovery kind of function, it's a no-brainer. If we can get together, it's much better. Now, the last question I had for you, which is something that we sort of talked about a little bit, but I've been sitting in the same room in front of the same screen, looking out at the same view every day, every work day for the last 8 weeks. And despite all of the community that we talked about, despite the ability to achieve different tasks, I also feel a little bit stagnant in my home office. Beautiful, I'm very comfortable, everything's great, but it's the same. Does an office support us to also, mix things up and change it around a bit?
Yeah, I think my, for me, like my productivity level when I worked from home 2 days a week was fantastic, because I'd be like, right, here's my chance to get stuff done.
Yeah.
But when that's every day, and like you say, the scenery doesn't change, sat at the same desk, I don't move as much as I do when I haven't got any punctuation in my day.
Yeah.
It's just one screen, one desk. And I think that, going to a meeting, going for a coffee, having a walk, around the building, or having a walk and talk meeting, or even sometimes I miss my drive into work as the break between, okay, I've left home, I finished getting ready, and now I'm kind of transitioning into work mode.
Yeah.
Or even jumping on the tram or the bus. Sometimes that is actually a useful time for us to get some time with our thoughts where we're not doing something else.
Yeah.
But I think, just being able to change it up and be in different places for different tasks, I think that variety can help kind of keep your brain active.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned before also, offices nowadays are not really just a row of desks and a row of screens. We have, in many cases, different spaces, different areas to do different tasks, even some flexible spaces. This has to help in that feeling that you describe of being able to punctuate and almost time box your day into different ways of achieving different tasks, and to keep things exciting and interesting.
Yeah, like I wouldn't want to go back to being at the same desk in an office every day, because that's no different to me being sat at home every day. But having the ability to be able to go in, book a room with a load of people, or book a desk for the day next to someone I want to crunch through something with, or that is what I want from an office. And I think that's what people will start to, or people already want from their offices, but that's where we need that flexibility from the office space to allow and to support the kind of activities that people want to do.
Yeah, definitely. And that brings me to a perfect end for today, but I think our next episode can be all about that, right? Because I think from our discussion, it's clear that that this situation doesn't spell the end for an office. An office still offers far more than just a roof and a place to put your desk and your worktop. And it's definitely not just a place where your boss knows where you are and what you're doing. It brings community, it facilitates productivity and creativity, specifically innovation, and also enables us to keep our days fresh, to keep every piece of that working week and every piece of that working life interesting and move us forward. So I'm excited for the next conversation where we can have a bit of a chat about how the actual office can help facilitate that flexibility that you mentioned. Thank you so much for joining me today.
No, thanks. It's been great. Really enjoyed it.
I have as well. And thank you to everyone out there for joining us. Please feel free to like, share, or comment on this episode. Subscribe to us here on the channel wherever you're listening or watching. Remember that you can go to YouTube and search Buildings of Tomorrow and find most of our episodes with the video content as well. And we'll see you very soon. Thank you.